Let me just hit the record button here as usual. For those who are either late or cannot make it, welcome all of you to ExOperiences. I would love if you introduce yourself in the chat today. I want to kind of go right at the bone here and dive into objectives and key results today and get the most out of this 1 hour. There's a lot that we can discuss, we can debate, we can share experiences with each other. Although I always appreciate we spend time on getting to know each other, and usually we spend quite a fair bit of time on that. Today I want to limit the introductions to the chat. So if that's okay for you, please put your brief introduction in the chat. You can put comments and questions in there as well. So during the session, we can have a conversation going there while we are also talking to each other at the same time. Excellent. It works so well as always. So thank you all for playing along here. I'm a little bit heavy on slides today because there's a lot of details when it comes to objectives and key results. I'm going to share everything I'm going to show you and more. I'll share that after the call with everybody who has signed up for this session. So you don't need to worry so much about making notes. Focus on the topic, focus on asking questions and be part of the discussion. You are welcome to interrupt me as I talk and raise questions and all of that. And let's get the most out of these 54 minutes that we have together in this session. So I'm going to just hit my keynote slides now and get started. But I will pause once in a while, pick up on comments in the chat, and I really want to get everybody involved in also sharing your experiences from working with objectives and key results. If you have any, if you don't, it's okay. If you have, let's bring them to the table, discuss your experiences. Obviously, in the context of exponential organizations, as usual in these sessions. So let's get started. I'm just sharing here my screen right away. So I'm going to pretty much skip my own introduction as well, just to say that I've been running ExO sprints for about 5 years, around the clock, almost every single day, I think, and workshops and other stuff. It's not always been involving objectives and key results, really, but in the last about a year, that has become a big focus in the sprints I've been involved in. Obviously, because it is a methodology that resonates well with exponential organizations, with transparency, scalability, autonomy, and these things. And it's a great way to really be clear about how we measure success and have that conversation in an organization. I've been running these ExOperiences calls for, as far as I can tell, about 11 months now, and this is number 9. So I haven't quite made my goal of running one per month, but almost getting there. It is an open ExO community session. Everybody is invited if you're interested in the topic. I see this as my way of giving back to a community that's given me so much. So I hope you find this valuable, and I'm happy, of course, to continue the conversations offline. There is a lot of content, a lot of experiences, and all of that. related also to this topic. The topic today, as I said, is about objectives and key results in the context of exponential organizations. It's a topic that many of our community members are interested in, many, and for good reasons, in my opinion. I'm going to be very light on the general introduction to what OKRs really are, but obviously we need a little bit of background for those of you who are relatively new to it. It is really a shared goals framework that came from Andy Grove at Intel, and now it's actually pretty widely used in highly scalable organizations, ExOs, and essentially the way it works is the company starts setting its annual and quarterly goals at company level. Those are the objectives at company level. That comes first. Then the teams set their objectives and key results at team level, and then individuals get to create their own individual OKRs. And all of this happens kind of at once in negotiation with each other. Everybody aligns with the company's objectives. And I'll show you some examples of how this looks like, some timelines of how this can play out, and obviously also some examples of specific OKRs. And but I want to begin somewhere else. I want to begin really with this table. And now we are already getting into a lot of detail, but this table has been used in quite a few workshops I've been running on this topic with organizations who were learning the ExO methodologies and at the same time needed an introduction to objectives and key results and how that works and how that can be adopted. And the biggest challenge is always that an organization has a very execution centric mindset, and the key performance indicators that are being used in the organizations are around execution, right? It's a lot about measuring the financial results and all of these things. But when we come in as ExO consultants and coaches to change the mindset of the organization, we represent an innovation approach, innovation frameworks that we are bringing in. And that is not about the lagging indicators of measuring financial results from last quarter. That's about something completely different. So we are introducing innovation accounting in an organization that really only appreciates operational metrics, right? This is this is one of the big challenges. So this is why from day one we might be seen as the intruder into the immune system, and we are speaking a different language. We talk about experimentation as a way to reduce risk and uncertainty, and this is really hard to swallow for many that expect predictable outcome, right? And that is not really what innovation gives you, but innovation does allow you to reduce risk, uncertainty, but it's a different way of measuring success. So this is the biggest challenge, and it's a challenge that you have to address when you work with transformation projects with clients. And I think objectives and key results can be a language that most clients understand. They can get a framework that helps explain the difference between execution accounting and innovation accounting. And you see here some examples of vocabularies, the differences in how we measure success. If you look at financials, for example, halfway down in the table, Typical execution metrics would be earnings per share, earnings growth rates, and these things. If you work on innovation projects, you work with kind of expected return of a business, but it's not a real return. It's just expectations, and it's very unpredictable. I do want to measure as a very specific example, however, the free cash flow rather than earnings per share. And this is Amazon. If you look at Bezos' letters, his 2004 letter in particular to the company, he talks at length about free cash flow, his definition of it, why this is an important way to drive a longer term thinking about the way of measuring financial success, measuring free cash flow. So there are some really interesting examples, and Amazon is always a great example to use, known by everybody, respected for their financial results, and they clearly achieve these results through experimentation and by adopting a lot of exponential attributes. So it's just to say you have good examples that you can build your work on as you work with your own clients. I'm not going deeper into this particular slide. Apologies. But you will be getting this material obviously after the session here. But the key point here is really that the client organization apply execution metrics, and you are working on innovation projects, and you need to measure success differently in those kind of projects, which is very hard to get introduced. But it must be part of your work when you work to transform an organization. We often use these examples you see here, Airbnb, and GitHub, and all the other ones here. You see examples here on how we typically compare these ExOs to traditional organizations. So you can say here maybe some examples of objectives or goals that your client could be interested in achieving. Certainly, 1,000 times cheaper to produce a particular product is interesting. 90 times more listings, faster product development, more investment, more market cap per employee, and so on and so forth. These can be examples for inspiration to ways of setting goals for exponential organizations. But let's dive deeper into the methodology around objectives and key results. And I'll just give you a brief introduction here. And this builds to a great deal on the book Measure What Matters by John Doerr. A great book, and it's considered the Bible if you want to learn more about this framework. I wanna share a little bit of personal experience as well as I'm giving this basic introduction here. And one of them is that it's not something you apply and then it works right away, and nothing is really. But with OKRs, really, it requires it needs to be massaged into an organization, and I'll get back to later how long that typically takes. You need to adapt, adjust, and make a lot of changes as you are learning with your client about the implementation of OKRs. So it takes time to try working with OKRs, to implement it. There's a lot of adjustments that needs to be done. And And you really need to position this, in my opinion, as quite experimental. It's really a learning journey, and each organization needs to adopt this in their own way, adapt it for their own needs, and allow this to take time. Expect some frustrations from the teams. Expect it to be a challenging process. Now, at objectives level, objectives and key results, right? Objectives typically are quarterly. Uh, and at company level, they are annual and quarterly. At team level, they are quarterly. And you need to also track your key results, and the key results delivered to your objectives. So you have a weekly tracking of key results that needs to deliver to your quarterly objectives. This is done at team level, and I'm now diving into the individual level as well. It may seem strange that we go to individual level in an organization already here, but I'll tell you why that is so important. And we do. So you also have in this cycle, you have one-on-ones with each of your team members. This is where you work with them to help them understand OKRs, help them understand the objectives at company level, at team level, help them really connect to their own objectives and key results, and have a personal discussion with them. This is an important part of the feedback loop, right? It's the way to give recognition, to praise the progress, boost morale, and that is really needed. That's how I have seen it. People get frustrated when they are being measured in new ways. They get insecure about it. Am I being monitored here? Is this a trap? What is this really? So you really need to work with individual team members as well as teams and larger parts of the organization all at the same time to really massage this into the organization. And these cycles obviously continue. Here's an example of a timeline. And here you see, for example, for the coming year, already in November, that's when you begin to consider your annual OKRs at company level. You also consider the coming quarter and the OKRs there. And during December, in this particular timeline, you are able now to communicate the company level OKRs to the whole organization and beyond the organization as well. If you are at that stage where you communicate openly with your ecosystem as well. That is not an easy journey to get that far, but at least inside of the company, you should be able to communicate widely your company level OKRs for the year and for the coming quarter. And that allows the teams that are part of adopting the OKR framework, that allows them to now decide on their own objectives and key results. As long as there's alignment to the company level, the teams now define their own objectives, break it down to key results as well that are measurable, and the teams communicate that. Now the employees have a stab at their own personal level OKRs, and which they also communicate, they share that. So it's now fully transparent at all levels. What are the objectives? What is it we need to accomplish? What are we committed to accomplish, right? It's not dictated from the top. It's a team level and individual level that everybody commits to these objectives, and everybody's clear about the measurable key results that shall deliver to these objectives. Then as we continue to work on delivering, we are tracking the progress at a frequency, at a cycle that works for the organization. Obviously, with reflection and evaluation after a cycle is completed, and you complete this cycle again. Now, here's another reason for why it's very important also to have the individual participants in teams involved in learning about OKRs and committing to them, because that's where the innovative ideas are coming from, right? They're not coming from the walls of the office, they're coming from the people in the teams. That's where the ideas are coming from. And so as the top level objectives have been defined and communicated, now the team picks them up and creates their own objectives with alignment, and then this drizzles down to the team level and the individual level, and that's where the ideas are coming. So you also need to make sure through your conversations, your one-on-ones, that people are feeling encouraged and motivated to share their ideas. This is the kind of stuff you also encourage if you're running ExO sprints in an organization or other activities to help the organization transform their mindset. This is really to avoid the company killing new initiatives. So the OKRs is a great way to support that process, support the encouragement of sharing ideas, as ideas can also come to mind when you understand the objectives that you need to accomplish. Then you get ideas. Those ideas can be shared at team level, and the teams can hopefully realize this could be a way we can deliver on our commitments. And when teams commit this through transparency and dashboards, then this is also available now at company level. So ideas are now openly shared, openly being worked on, and can hopefully be part of contributing to the success of the organization. So there's a little bit of a checklist here to get started on OKRs, and I'll come in a moment also to specific OKR examples and all of that. But I just wanted also to give this little checklist here, which can be a help to get started. And as with everything else in our ExO world here, we begin with a massive transformative purpose, right? And the North Star of the organization. Without that, it's really hard to make sense of objectives, setting objectives, in which direction should we be going, right? So without the MTP in place, it's really hard to get anywhere with the OKRs. That's not going to fix anything for you, really, unless you have an MTP in place. So keep that in mind if you are out offering workshops and other activities to your clients. You need early on to get the MTP into the loop here before we begin with actually measuring success, like we're talking about here. There's a recommendation here of some articles and exercises by Jim Collins when it comes to working with the company's core values and behaviors and decision making and these things. I'll just park that for now here on this slide without going into it. But it's worthwhile checking out. Also, who are the people you want to get involved when you start working with objectives and key results? This is not for everybody, because this is really for self-directed self-starters, people who are really on fire to do what it takes, who really want to get things done, who want to accomplish results. right? Uh, and and those kind of profiles will generally love working with OKRs and have the ownership of their own objectives, their own key results. Others, not so much. In many, especially larger organizations, this sounds terrible to many employees. So you're not going to get buy-in from everybody to do this. Right? Keep that in mind, and I'm sure everybody is very familiar with this pushback and this resistance and this, hey, what is this? Is the new shiny thing from the management? I'm not interested, right? So this is not for everybody, and keep that in mind when you and be selective when you work with a client at top level to identify who are the early adopters in this organization that should try working with objectives and key results first. Be very selective. Make sure you have some teams who are open-minded, who are willing to try this out, so you don't have that immediate resistance about this, but an open mind from everybody to learn together, to feedback, to keep adjusting, and see how this can work for the organization. So create small teams, independent teams, and give them the autonomy to do what they need to do. Create dashboards, and I'm sure many of you are masters on dashboards. And make sure and it doesn't have to be sophisticated tools. An Excel spreadsheet on a shared drive can be a great dashboard, right? And there are many free tools. I'll share a few of them later that can be excellent dashboards company-wide as well, to make sure that objectives and key results are shared openly, that there's full transparency around the needed metrics. This is key. Without that, this doesn't work. You're going to need additional ExO attributes to really get the autonomy that you are looking for when you start adopting OKRs. So this is in good hands with you. You're going to love applying ExO attributes, and I'll show you later how you can get creative around that as well. Okay, so I'm now shifting to something a bit more specific. I'm going to shift to marketplace initiatives. Let's talk about OKRs for marketplaces. And I'm doing this because when we are doing ExO sprints and other kind of work with companies and other types of organizations, new initiatives are typically platform initiatives, marketplaces, ecosystem-based business models, these kind of dynamics which are new to the organization, and very much probably needed kind of initiatives, right? We need to shift our legacy business models. We need to experiment with new business models to have a chance in the 21st century. And marketplaces often come up. There are many marketplace ideas in every sprint we are running, and I'm sure you're coming across many as well. So I thought it could be interesting just to summarize some of the OKRs that we see being preferred by our clients when they work on marketplaces. And you see here 4 types of metrics really for marketplaces: the business metrics, usage metrics, transaction metrics, and user satisfaction metrics. And I'm not going to run through all of them, and I'm sure you know most of them. Customer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value are frequently used, have been used for many years in online businesses. And users metrics is very common as well. And Google Analytics has been putting that power in everybody's hands for years. It's an amazing tool that gives you really detailed insights into monthly active users, bounce rates, time spent on site, and these kind of metrics. Transaction metrics are a bit harder in terms of finding tools that give you similar dashboards out of the box. So here you probably need to get creative and be a little bit manual. But the metrics that are very common in marketplaces are about liquidity, both on the provider side and the customer side of a platform. You look at provider to customer ratios, repeat purchase ratio, and these things. But I have come across a tool, the Marketplace KPI spreadsheet by Boris Wertz and Angela Kinyans, and that should be searchable on Google if you want to look that up. I haven't yet really found a solid online service that gives you all of this out of the box like Google Analytics does for users metrics, but there might be some coming up hopefully. But this requires a little bit of manual creativity, which you might enjoy. On user satisfaction metrics, obviously Net Promoter Score is something to consider. User reports and SurveyMonkey offer some really good tools to help you on that. There's also the product market fit survey, which is the question, how would you feel if you no longer can use our product? And there's survey.io offers that survey that you can try out with your clients next time you have a need to look at user satisfaction metrics. So this was just to give you a quick download specifically for marketplace initiatives, which you will come across again and again and again and again when you work on ExO transformation projects. I'll be touching only very lightly on learning metrics, but this is very important in our world, right? When we shift our mindset, we upskill, reskill ourselves to be relevant in the workforce in the future. We need new skill sets, new capabilities. Here's a list of capabilities and skill set that our clients have been identifying. They wanted to acquire these skill sets. So you can specifically actually suggest these if clients are not really aware of what is needed to be an innovator, to be a disruptor in the future. You need new ways of working as well. And we have some experience on what that can look like. Although that is the hard part, that's behavioral change, and that is uncomfortable. But once an organization realizes they have to change, they need to find out how we then need to work instead. And then I'll be beginning the discussion with you in just a moment now. But this is really also some golden nuggets for you, provided by fellow OpenExO community members. I've been spending the last 7-8 months at least asking a lot of questions to everybody I met. If they had experience from OKRs, working with OKRs, I was asking the same questions all the time. One of the most interesting ones for me was when you start introducing OKRs to a client's organization, how long time will it take for that to find its balance and to be accepted and to really start working in a new organization? Everybody says it takes about 6 months, or maybe you should consider minimum 6 months. So it takes a while to get there. Typically, we have too many objectives the first time we try. Way too many objectives. And for each objective, you have 5, 6, 7 different key results. And you look at a massive workload. and everybody gets stressed out, and you need to update your dashboard. You need to, it's too much. Then there's kind of a fight in the organization to reduce number of objectives. Then you may have too few objectives. You're not really making enough progress. And so it's like the pendulum that shifts back and forth until it comes into balance, and you find the right balance between OKRs and manageable workload. OKRs, as I said, for innovation work, they're frequently not understood by big parts of client organizations, or your own organization for that matter, because we're used to being asked for financial metrics. How much are we selling, Lars? How much are we selling this quarter, right? How much can we produce? Do we have bottlenecks? But innovation work is different. Innovation accounting is very different. So you have an educational role to make sure this really works. You need to educate the organization at all levels, really, about how this works, why this is important, and how we can get it to work, and also how long it typically takes to get there. So everybody goes into this with their eyes open. What we hear from everybody is that once everybody in the teams see the traction, see the outcome, then they really appreciate it. They when they focus on a specific outcome and they achieve it, that is an amazing feeling, and it boosts morale, and everybody's more eager to try again and to do even better, right? You gotta have a balance of financial metrics, learning metrics, etc. Really, in when you define your objectives and key results. Also down to specific key results for experiments, the type of, for example, type of technologies that you need to learn as an organization so you get it done. So blockchain is no longer something somebody else does. We can pull in a partner to do it, although you really need some in-house knowledge about these technologies as well. How do we make sure we really learn about these technologies, the power of them, but also the challenges of them? So you need some learning metrics as well, that make sure you acquire this knowledge in-house, even if you then hire staff on demand and use partners externally to really build things. We talked about dashboards already. This really helps collaboration across all the silos in an organization. So it's very, very important to have these dashboards, keep them updated. It's easier said than done, right? But it is very important. Okay, one of the last points that I keep hearing from our consultants in the network is that every time you meet your client, you have to explain it over again, right? You already went through OKRs, how it works, the benefits, the challenges, and next time you meet them, you need to explain it again. It's not until the client, could be many, many months later, they start to see the impact, see the results of this. Then they understand the value of OKRs. Then they start to own it in their own way, and then they take it. They start adopting it for real, and that is a process. And so patience is probably required as well. It is required. All right, the final thing, it's very important. I mentioned already, some will be resisting this. Some will not be willing even to work with OKRs. And the reason really is the transparency. right? And we understand the power of transparency and how great that is, that everybody can be aligned. It helps communication, it helps generally, but for some, transparency is uncomfortable, right? What happens if I'm not meeting my objectives, right? How does that impact my career in this company, and everything related to it? So a lot of people will feel insecure and uncomfortable with this transparency, which is why you really need to educate everybody. You need to work down all the way down to one-on-one basis with everybody that you want to be part of this, and explain to them how this is used and how this is not used. So, and this is not to be mixed with performance reviews. And this needs to be made very clear, that there are other conversations for other types of meetings, for example, performance reviews, salary negotiation, those things. Keep that separate. It's very important. So people can feel they can be open, they can be transparent about the business objectives, what we as a team needs to accomplish, what's important to prioritize. If we start feeling insecure and this will impact my career, I stop being open, right? And this is the default starting point for many, unfortunately, right? That's what you can expect, and then we need to work our way out of that to make sure people understand this and they are willing to play along, and then we can get started. So this is some learning and experiences from other OpenExO consultants. I think I'll skip this in the interest of time. These are some examples of OKRs that were created by one of our clients, a sprint client, during a sprint. So we let them define objectives and key results for the sprint period, which was 10 weeks. And here you see some examples. It's not super interesting, and they're not super good OKRs. So I'm going to skip them, but you can see them when you get the material. What is more interesting, I think, is have the conversation about how we change the way we work and use our ExO canvas to facilitate that conversation. And this is actually one of our community members that suggested this approach, where you go through each of the ExO attributes one at a time, like you probably would with a client anyway, to look at turning a business model into an exponential business model. Now here we kind of look inwards and say, how can we work differently if we apply interfaces, if we apply dashboards, experimentation? What does that really mean for the way we work? And what OKRs could be relevant to define to achieve certain results in the way we work and in the way we change the way we work, right? So you can use this tool with a laser focus on how we work, how we organize ourselves, how we measure the outcome of our teamwork and these things. So try that. It's a little exercise. You can try it on your own way of working first, and when you feel that, hey, this could actually work, then try it with a client. Run a couple of hours workshop with your client. Try it out and get some ideas to OKRs that might work for them. Try it out, spend a quarter changing the way you work, and measure the outcome. Evaluate and do it again if you think you're on the right track here. All right, so just to recap, there are great results in engaging everyone when you apply OKRs. People are generally statistically disengaged and dissatisfied in their work, and it's a huge problem globally. So this could actually be a way to give people insights into what is it the company wants, how do I play a role in that. That motivates people. It creates better engagement and better results for everybody. So just right there, you would have a benefit in many cases, not in every case, but in many cases. OKRs help translating strategy into action. Start at the company level with the mission and vision, which doesn't change that much that often. Then you get down to objectives, which are quarterly. Then your key results, which you probably measure monthly. And then to accomplish each key result, you would have a lot of actions you need to work on, which you would track weekly and probably in many cases daily as well. Your learning curve increases, and your key results needs to be measured objectively. Objective grading is really the way to ensure learning in the organization. It shouldn't be too subjective. It should be clear what we have learned by when and these things. So, and again, don't mix this up with employee evaluation. You get transparency and overview. Purdue, and I haven't tried Purdue, but I've heard good things about it as a platform where you can manage your OKRs on. And as far as I understand, it's free, so it might be worthwhile checking that out. Weekdone.com is another platform. It's a little bit on the costly side. It's good, but a bit costly. So Purdue might be a good free alternative. Aligning of efforts, obviously, when you have transparency and connection across all levels, you have a better chance at getting alignment and getting things done. I just put in Measure What Matters here, again, by John Doerr, the book to be read about OKRs. So that was a lot of talking from me. To give you an introduction, short introduction to OKRs, but also sharing some experiences from ExO Sprint we've been running and other kind of projects, and it's been my experience, but also experience collected from fellow OpenExO friends that have been doing something very similar. So I'm going to take questions here. Thank you all for keeping the chat going. Yes, Antonio is mentioning Bezos. Yeah, he was also trying to manage expectations. It paid off, sure. Yes.
Hi, Lars. If I may ask a short question or share some experience, because we recently, or like since a little bit more than 6 months, introduced OKRs in a company I'm working for.
Mm-hmm.
And I can relate to a lot of those findings. You said like a big issue, especially in the beginning, and I still think is that people are overwhelmed with just the documentation process, or like the process they have to keep the OKRs up to date. They have to take care of the dashboard. And the other thing, maybe you have like an idea there or an insight there, which I personally discovered. If you have like an MTP, and you then try to match the OKRs with the MTP, or from the MTP go down to the OKRs. The MTP is very vague as a definition, right? Like if you say cure cancer worldwide, you can do a lot of things which might lead to that MTP. So how do you then manage to kind of find the track or find the right objectives which are right for you? Because you could basically say, okay, my objectives are now, we focus on technological research or something in that aspect. Another could be something totally different. And you have like so many options. And I felt like a lot of companies are then struggling to actually focus, because the MTP, although it's like it should help us to focus, but actually in that case, it sometimes does the opposite.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. From all observations I've done, the way I see it, the closer you get to the core of your own organization, the more you really have to prioritize your initiatives, right? You cannot do everything to support your MTP. You do need to prioritize with the resources you have in the core. When it comes to your community and crowd out around you, you can allow free play, right? And if you have a strong MTP, which is really a magnet to a lot of people, a lot of organizations, they want to, gather around that MTP. They want to start initiatives, community related initiatives. Then it doesn't really matter if you have 2,000 teams all out there working virtually to do exciting things to support that MTP. It doesn't really impact the core of your business and your own internal resources at all. So when it comes to your own strategic priorities, then you need to get a laser focus on what is it we need to get done in the core team, whether you have one or two or three or four core teams there. So that requires more focus. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So let me just check the chat here. And says, where did you find those OKRs for those companies? Very interesting. First, we can crowdsource more. Yes, and I hope we can accomplish that. And I'm putting this information online, right? So you can get back to these slides, to the tables and all of that. Let's crowdsource this. This stuff is yours. We've spent 7-8 months collecting these examples, and this stuff, it's yours. I really hope we can collaborate on, when you come across interesting OKRs, let's add them to the mix, make them available to everybody. So I'll find out how we best collaborate in a document or something like that. Yes.
Well, the team has missed the second site that you said. In addition to Purdue, what is the second site? The name of the site?
Purdue and weekly done. Hang on, let me just get it right here. It's called Week Done. I'll put it in the chat here. Weekdone.com. Weekdone.com.
Okay, thank you, Lars.
Yeah. They have a platform where you can configure your OKRs, you can track them, team members can log in, update their key results and these things. Very nice user interface, really cool service. So worth checking out for sure. All right. Eric says, can someone please share those sites again? Yes, thank you, Diana. Purdue, and then weekdone.com.
Lars, I had a question in advance. I know that the typical cycle for the OKR is 3 months, a quarter. And I think the question I had is, how do we reconcile those OKRs with an organization that takes an agile type approach? They want to pivot even sooner than that. How does OKR work in that environment?
Yeah. So you should allow yourself to terminate your quarterly objectives if you see a need to pivot. Then pivot. It is my personal opinion in most cases. If you see that we have a desperate need to pivot now, do it. And then you define new quarterly objectives. You do need something like a quarter or at least more than a few weeks, right, to accomplish your objectives. Your objectives need to be bigger than your tasks, right? So you need to have a strategic focus on accomplishing your objective. So this is why you need a certain period of time to accomplish that. A quarter is just the way it's easy to define the time period. But you can change that. You can make it a quarterly objective as well. It's not a problem. The only challenge I see is if your key results become like daily activities, then it turns into task management, and that's what you're doing already. So your team members will say, well, we are already managing our task. What's the point? What's the difference here? So you need to be careful about not have too short time cycles, but for objectives, you can make them monthly, not a problem at all. It's just by default, you call them quarterly objectives. And if you need to pivot, then pivot and define new objectives.
Okay, thank you, Lars.
It's a good question. Other good or other questions? I'm sure they're good. They've been really good so far. And Antonio, food for thought for the education enthusiasts. Thank you. There's many of us. Google to offer career certificates. Yes, equivalent to a 4-year college degree. Thank you for sharing that link.
Yeah, Google is coming now in the education industry, so more disruption coming in for education.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that. It's a very interesting initiative. We see quite a few of these, so we are following these closely. Certainly interesting times for educational enthusiasts. Yeah, thank you for the comments and the messages in the chat here. I'm available for a bit longer if anybody have questions. You're welcome, Marianne. You're welcome, Anne, and everybody, Magali.
I have a question, Lars.
Yes, Megan.
When you create a OKR for a company, how do you connect it to the scale or ideas? Understand the question?
Right. I think the most important thing in your question I want to address is really, you say the OKRs I create. It's obviously the client's team or the team that creates the OKRs, unless it's my business and I'm at the corporate level, right? The ownership has to be with the team, with the ones defining them. And this is actually where it gets a little bit tricky, because you usually have good opinions about what would make a good objective, but you shouldn't impose those on your client or on the team. You should help them in the process to get to good objectives and good key results, right? Without it's like, if I'm your fitness coach, I'm not here to tell you how many kilos you should be losing or how many kilometers you should be running, but I'm here to motivate you and keep you accountable and help you with some tools and processes if you need that. So but how do you connect objectives to the ExO attributes? Well, the first time around you simply try. I showed one illustration where you look at one ExO attribute at a time. Take interfaces first. Is that relevant for your organization right now, or for the transformation of it, to consider interfaces? Typically the answer is yes. I would assume it's always yes. So what objectives would be relevant to consider, right? And so this is one direction to take. You look at interfaces. You're going to need some sort of interfaces. What could you do with that? It is one direction. Obviously, there's another direction as well to consider separately, which is what's the challenge you're facing right now, where you need the interface to solve that challenge. It's typically scalability. It's typically lack of transparency. Your customers have not easy enough access to your data, to your services and these things, so you need interfaces, right? So you have a business challenge, So you can also, and you should look at it that way as well, identify your business challenges and then go through the ExO attributes one at a time to see which of these could help in some way to solve this business challenge. And if you can see a correlation there, then define objectives to make sure you have that focus. You don't need to care about how you do it. You leave that to your autonomous team to figure that out, right? Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Beautiful background you have, Maicon, by the way.
Thanks.
Excellent. As I said in the beginning, there's, Antonio.
Yes.
Over to you, Antonio.
Yeah, go ahead, Lars.
I was just saying there's a lot to cover, right? It's a huge topic, objectives and key results. If you have specific cases where you're stuck or you need inspiration, I'm happy to connect separately and see how we could put together a plan, right? But this is the introduction that I wanted to share for today. Antonio?
Yes, and Lars, just before I finish, I was trying to send a file here to you and Crystal. Diana also on the, I came across a very interesting study yesterday about the future of business education after the pandemic. It's a very interesting study, and Crystal and I are working on the Exponential MBA, Crystal, and I think it's going to be quite important for us, but I am having some difficulties in attaching the file. So what I will do is I will send to you, I don't have Crystal's email, but I will send to you, Lars, and then you feel free to share with the community. It's a very interesting study. It shows how the AI-led innovation is gonna transform business education. It's quite interesting.
Woohoo! You're definitely.
And again, it's very. I found the study very intriguing, very intriguing. Diana, you feel free to share with Diana also and Macon. There is a big tsunami coming in education, I think.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for sharing, Antonio.
And Crystal is also working on the Exponential MBA with the other team members. Yeah, there's a lot of change coming. And I think one of the challenges, Diana, where are you based, Diana?
I'm right now in Miami, but I'm
in Miami. Okay, and Macon is, where are you based, Macon? Hello, Macon, are you there?
I think Brazil.
She's in Brazil? Oh, Macon are in Brazil. Olá, Macon, tudo bem?
Olá, tudo bem?
Tudo bem. We are Brazilian also. I'm Brazilian also. I think one of the challenges that was very interesting, there was an article in the Washington Post 1 month ago talking about the challenges that the top US business schools are facing because of the transition to online education.
Yes.
And the challenge was the following: how can they justify those prices in a new world where education is transitioning more and more online? Because the business model of those schools, as you know, they have been focused on building athletic facilities, all the networking that they allow people to do. So they put a lot of value in areas that fall outside of the education process. And now there is a significant dilution of those attributes in the new environment, right? So those guys now have to adapt very strongly how they can survive in an environment where they are not prepared for. So it's going to be fascinating how schools are adapting to this new world. And I just shared with you the article from Fast Company to say how can I justify the value of the networking? Because Diana may be aware of this. She's in the US. They put a lot of value, Diana, as you know, on the personal connections that they make when they are in school. So what happens when they go online, Diana? Are those connections equally valuable? Can they still charge $50,000 per year?
No way.
So, but it's fascinating the way that they have to transition to a new model for example, all those athletic facilities, Diana, that they develop in campus, as you know, is it still valuable as much? So there is, I think from my personal point of view, there is a tsunami coming in education, tsunami, a tremendous tsunami.
It's already happening, right? And I don't think there's going to be much transition of a university or business school. I think either you find new value so you can justify your fee, or you're done. You're out.
Done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think, I think you're right. It's going to be very tough to justify the value as of now. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
We have already in Educate for Life, we have already been running ExO sprints with business schools in Thailand and in Colombia and a couple of more places. And we see exactly the same thing. And we have seen this tsunami already since beginning of 2019, actually. COVID-19 is just accelerating it. It's been happening for a while, but now it becomes very visible that especially the private universities, business schools, they're in trouble, in big trouble.
Yeah, they have to adapt very quickly to this new environment where education, first of all, I think I fundamentally believe that education has to be more accessible, democratized.
Yeah.
And if they don't do that, Google's going to do that for them. I think that's the bottom line, Lars. Either they do or Google does.
Yeah.
Teacher Google.
Yeah.
Or Amazon, Diana. Eventually, Amazon can also do it.
Yeah.
So Lars, I just sent to your email the paper. Can you try to see if you can attach to the chat? I was not able to do so for some reason.
Okay, but I will share your document and read it with great interest and get back to you. Let's set up a separate call to discuss it. We all super passionate about this particular domain, and I was planning to be the disruptor, and then COVID-19 came and did it for me. So now we just need to fill the vacuum with new exciting offerings, which are free or at least affordable for everybody out there, right?
And I think so. You are in the right direction. I think COVID-19 was telling you you are in the right path, Lars. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, yeah.
So Diana, did you go through business school, Diana, yourself?
I did, yes. I did business school in China.
Oh, in China. You did. Oh, in China?
Correct.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah,
so
in Beijing.
In Beijing. The article that I just sent to you, folks, is related to U.S. business schools, because I think that's what the biggest problem is. Because the online education is turning around their business model.
It is, and it's just meant to happen, I think, to some extent, right? As you were mentioning, like education to me is also meant to be democratized, right? And I hope, they take this opportunity of, the wave and democratize, right? I feel like you just gotta do it.
Yeah. And it's not my personal MTP, Diana. It's not the case, but I fundamentally believe 20 years from now, education is going to be free. Education is going to be a public good. That's my belief.
Yes, there's people working to make that happen.
Yeah.
Myself here.
I think it's gonna be a public good. Everybody has the right to education, to be able to adapt to the way things are working.
They have the right, but we also need everybody to be educated and to be living sustainably and to contribute to find solutions to the damage we have already done to our planet.
That's correct. That's correct. We have to find the solutions for the past.
Yeah. So we need everybody educated, and many cannot afford the tuition fees that we have seen in the past. So things have to change, and they are changing.
And I am from Brazil, and I watch the news there. the pandemic made very clear the digital divide also taking place in the society. For example, many kids couldn't take online classes because either they don't have the technology or the classes don't have the resources. So it further expand the gap between kids that have better access to education and other kids.
Yeah.
Amplify the gap. And so this is unthinkable.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are working on it, and Antonio, please feel free to join our work in this direction. It's exciting.
And as I said, Lars, Crystal and I are also part of the group from OpenExO on Exponential MBA.
Yes, exciting. I'll catch up with you guys to hear how that is moving forward. So,
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, folks. Have a great day. Thank you very much. Thanks for putting together this effort. Thank you.
Lars,
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, Lars. Thank you.
Crystal.
Thank you, friends.
Take care, everybody. See you soon. Bye.